Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. I just completed a briefing with the Unified Command Group here at GOSEP. Obviously, Tropical Storm Nate is developing very quickly, and it is moving quickly as well. It's already claimed 17 lives in Nicaragua and in Honduras when it was overland there. In models just released at 4 p.m. today, the storm track has actually moved slightly further to the west, and as a result, we do anticipate a direct hit in Louisiana when it makes landfall. And currently, the cone for this track extends from the Vermilion Parish area on the far west over to the Alabama-Florida line on the far east. The state of Louisiana is prepared, but everyone must pay close attention. Because the waters in the Gulf of Mexico remain extremely warm, there is potential for this storm to intensify very quickly. Landfall is expected early Sunday morning, either as a strong tropical storm or a weak Category 1 hurricane. But that's what's expected as of today. As this storm moves across the Gulf, everyone should pay very close attention because intensification is certainly possible once it enters the Gulf and travels over those warm waters. So stay alert, monitor the updates, and follow the directions you're given from local authorities. The bottom line for people is that you need to be where you want to be and in the posture you want to be by dark on Saturday. So here at GOSEP, we are monitoring this storm with H-hour being 2000 hours or 8 o'clock on Saturday evening, because that's when we need to be ready. Once it gets dark, things are much more difficult, and so we're asking people to make sure that they are fully ready and prepared where they want to be and in the proper posture by 8 o'clock on Saturday night. I have declared a state of emergency ahead of this storm and will later today and very shortly request President Trump declare a pre-landfall state of emergency here in Louisiana. You should know that I have already spoken with FEMA Administrator Brock Long and Tom Bossert, who is the President's Homeland Security Advisor. I am confident that they are prepared to offer the support that the state of Louisiana would need in order to effectively deal with this storm. And I appreciate the proactive nature with which they are approaching this storm and communicating and coordinating with the state of Louisiana. We can expect tropical storm force winds beginning late Saturday in southeastern Louisiana, with some areas feeling hurricane force winds. I have authorized 1,300 National Guard troops to mobilize ahead of this storm, and we will position 15 National Guard troops to assist the city of New Orleans to monitor pumps. Mayor Landrieu of New Orleans and I have been in regular contact, and we will stay in contact to ensure that the state is supporting the city as necessary and advisable. Everyone in South Louisiana should begin preparing for this storm now. We've had a number of threats this hurricane season, and we have been blessed when Harvey went left and Irma went right. That is not what we anticipate out of Nate. So everyone should take this very seriously. We do expect a rain event of 3 to 6 inches in the vicinity of the eye and to the immediate east of the eye, and certainly as the track of this storm pushes further west, which it's done lately, that exposes more of Louisiana to the heaviest rainfall. We also expect 4 to 6 feet of storm surge above ground level. Now, the good news is that this storm is moving very quickly. Forward speed is anticipated to be around 15 miles per hour. So with any luck, it will not stay around long enough to drop a lot more water on us than is currently forecasted. However, even if you have a short duration but high intensity rainfall, localized flooding is possible, and I do encourage everyone to make sure that you do not drive through water when you don't know how fast it's moving or how deep it is. If you have transportation or medical needs, it's important that you get in touch with your parish office of Homeland Security and emergency preparedness as soon as possible. I would still encourage everyone to visit getagameplan.org. That is, getagameplan.org for information on how to prepare. And you can also visit emergency.la.gov for important updates. Our next briefing will be sometime tomorrow afternoon after our next UCG meeting, which I anticipate having that meeting at 3 p.m. tomorrow. So it'll be about this time tomorrow that we will have the next press conference. So with that, I am ready to take questions. And if you have questions that are directed to the folks behind me, that's perfectly okay too.
Governor, in the conversations with Mayor Landrieu, what kind of concerns are there about the pumps being at full capacity to deal with any flooding? I mean, obviously New Orleans has been flooding in some of the rainstorms, right?
Yeah. Well, and that sort of has been the history of New Orleans for a long time, actually. Intense afternoon thunderstorms in the summer have always, at least in my life, had the ability to cause street flooding. Based on the forecasted rainfall that we can expect in the area of 3 to 6 inches, we don't anticipate that this is going to cause a devastating impact to New Orleans or exceed the ability for the pumps or the electrical generation down there to pump out that water. And we know from talking to Mayor Landrieu and his team down in New Orleans that the capacity there is better than it has been at any time over this summer, and potentially even going back further than that. So we're working with them very closely, coordinating with them. And that's one of the reasons that we are sending National Guardsmen down there, so that we know all the pumps are being monitored real time with communications, so that in the event that that corrective action needs to be taken on those pumps, it happens as soon as possible. But based on the forecast that we have in front of us and based on the reports we're getting out of the city of New Orleans, I'm not going to tell you I'm not concerned, but I am not unduly or overly concerned. Yes, sir.
Governor, a lot of people hear Category 1 and they may not be as concerned as with other storms, a stronger category. Why is that just not the best practice?
Well, first of all, they would have a short memory, because Isaac was a Category 1, and it caused flooding in parts of Louisiana that had never been flooded before. Go ask the people down in St. John what a Category 1 storm can do. And so this is going to be a wind event and a rain event. And the other part of that is there is no guarantee that it's only a Category 1 when it comes on land. As I mentioned before, rapid intensification is possible because when this storm enters the Gulf and starts traveling over those superheated waters, that energy transfers from the water into the storm itself and does cause that intensification. And so anybody who's taken this storm lightly is making a serious mistake. And again, I don't want to cause undue panic or alarm, but people need to be prepared for this. They need to be paying attention. They need to monitor the weather service for updates, and they need to listen to local elected officials when it comes to things like evacuations, be they mandatory, which we already have a mandatory evacuation in St. Bernard Parish outside of the hurricane protected area, and we have a voluntary evacuation down in Grand Isle. And there may be more of these coming, and you also have information as it relates to road closures and different things that people need to pay attention to. But people should certainly not take this storm lightly because it's currently forecasted to be either a tropical storm or a Category 1 hurricane. Yes, ma'am.
Following up on Melinda's question, so you said there are National Guardsmen that are going to go to New Orleans to monitor the pumps.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just looking for a little clarity, like what are they supposed to do if something goes wrong?
Well, if the pumps are running and stop running, they call.
Okay.
The sewage.
Just, like, watching them?
Well, yeah, they are monitored. They so that we get real-time information as it relates to the operation of the pumps. And this is some additional assistance that the city requested, and by the way, this is not an unusual request, and so the request or the fact that we're sending the National Guardsmen down there also should not cause undue alarm. This is something that we've done on a regular basis, in fact.
It's normally done when hurricanes?
Well, whenever requested. And so this is not the first exercise of this nature we've done, and of course this is an exercise. We're getting ready for a real storm, but this is something we've been coordinating with New Orleans at least all summer. Should this happen?
Are the guardsmen like mechanical ability? Are they mechanics that can step in and do stuff? Or
Well, they certainly have they certainly have some ability to do that, and I'm going to let General Curtis come up and answer the question. But this is a mission for which they have been specially trained. They are primarily there to observe the pumps, and they have the ability not just to report but to move. So they have vehicles, and they are on a routine patrol where they're getting their eyes on pumps, and they will report if in fact those pumps are not running. Again, not to unduly concern people, this is a fairly standard mission that we have for the National Guard to assist the folks in New Orleans. You want to add anything to that?
Thank you, Governor. The only thing I would add is, as the Governor said, they will be in our vehicles. They will have communications, telephones, and radios back to the Sewage and Water Board and to the city, so that if a pump goes down, they'll call it in, and then they will dispatch maintenance teams forward to get that pump back up or replace it.
When was the last time they did that?
They did it in, what was the last storm that came on us? Harvey. Whenever Harvey came in Texas, they were out doing it. Yes, ma'am.
they would be city maintenance teams that they would dispatch?
I'm sorry?
City maintenance teams
Yes.
or guard maintenance?
No, city maintenance teams.
Are guardsmen coming back from Puerto Rico?
They are not. They're not. There's about 400 that are in Puerto Rico currently, but rest assured, I've asked the governor for up to 1,300 as the storm is coming in. We have additional soldiers and airmen available. So the guardsmen that are currently in Puerto Rico are there for at least 30 days, and it could be extended beyond that.
General, what type of deployment of guards here in the Baton Rouge area can you expect? Anything noteworthy?
For the Baton Rouge area locally, probably nothing at this time. Based on the strike of the storm, we always follow the track of the storm, and we will respond to it. Currently, as the track is laid out, it'll be mostly southeast Louisiana, the North Shore area, and then that greater New Orleans area as it stands today.
Governor, you spoke of people needing to be where they want to be Saturday night. Are you encouraging people to evacuate
No.
from any area?
I'm
or-
encouraging people to do what they are advised to do by their local authorities. And I mentioned we already have one mandatory evacuation for a relatively small part of the population in St. Bernard Parish that is outside the levee system. There is a voluntary evacuation down in Grand Isle, and there may be further developments along this line. But people know where they live, and they know whether their property is prone to flooding. And so I would encourage them to use common sense and to take every precaution. The other thing on the National Guard that I would want to remind you all is the mission that's happening down in Puerto Rico is extremely important. And the deployment of those 400 National Guardsmen to Puerto Rico will not in any way hinder our ability to respond to this storm on behalf of the people in Louisiana. And further, we have the ability through requests to other states, should we need them, and we won't need them for personnel, but if we need particular assets, we can get those from other states through their National Guards, which is something we routinely do anyway. So I don't want anybody out there to be alarmed or in any way concerned about the deployment of our National Guardsmen in Puerto Rico diminishing our ability to respond to this storm.
You said 8 p.m. Saturday night? Is that
Well, that's what we're using here. It's really going to be overnight, early Sunday morning, but based on the speed with which they think the storm is going to move across the Gulf of Mexico, we are encouraging everyone to be looking at this as being where they want to be in the proper posture come dark on Saturday night. Yes,
Just to kind of touch back on that, I know that Entergy has been doing a lot to warn people. I know that they're part of your updates. Are there any concerns that they have about capacity with this, or people losing?
No, we had the folks from the Public Service Commission in the UCG meeting today. There are no concerns that they have that are out of the ordinary. Obviously, the stronger the wind and the longer it blows, the more likely trees are knocked into power lines. But so they are getting ready. They're following the forecast too, and they have an idea now, because they have a tremendous amount of experience, what we can expect based upon a storm of this of the anticipated strength and moving through on the timeline that it's expected to move through. But I expect that the Entergy and other utilities will be prepared for this storm.
I know you said that you talked to the FEMA administrator, but with FEMA stretched between Harvey, Irma, Maria response, is there a concern that they're going to be stretched too thin and that it's going to be very difficult to get supplies if needed, or just get immediate responses?
No, there is not that concern, and I suspect that's principally why they called me, to make sure that they wanted to make sure that I knew, and the state of Louisiana knew, that they were paying attention, that they weren't so involved with things in Florida, Texas, and Puerto Rico that they weren't paying attention, and that they had the ability to respond. And one of the things that we were briefed on earlier at the UCG is that the assets, and I've got an individual here from FEMA who can maybe address this more, but FEMA has recovered its pre-storm posture to a very large degree from Harvey that hit in Texas, and they are ready. They are embedded with us here in Baton Rouge now in a very significant way, and they'll be ready for this storm.
One last question.
Yes, ma'am.
You said, based on the 4 o'clock tracking, that it shifted a little bit.
Yeah.
Where, I know that more of Louisiana is affected, but where, based on what we're seeing now, do you expect to be hit the hardest?
Well, the cone still runs from about Vermilion Parish on the west to the Florida-Alabama line on the east. And so the storm could impact anywhere within that cone with a direct hit. And there's a certain percentage of these storms where they actually impact outside of the cone. So everybody should be concerned about this. But the further west the track takes the storm, and the more of a direct hit we get in central portion of Louisiana, then the more of the storm that is in the eye and to the immediate right or east of the eye, and that's where the most intense rainfall happens. That is where the most intense winds happen. And so it looks like the brunt of that will happen inside of the state of Louisiana based on the current track. But exactly where it hits on the coast, somewhere in southeast Louisiana right now, is the main track. And this is going to be updated, I think, every 12 hours or so between now and when the storm actually does make landfall. And that one of the reasons we're going to wait until this time tomorrow is we will have the benefit of 2 more updates from the National Weather Service before we come back. But everybody has the ability to monitor the National Weather Service and their local news programs to see what the track of the storm is going to be. So this is a storm not to be taken lightly. This is not an exercise. And if we get exactly what's forecasted, it's going to be serious. There's always the chance that it's going to intensify beyond what is currently forecasted. And one of the things that we were told today by the National Weather Service is they feel much better about the track of the storm, gauging where it's going to land, than they do about the intensity upon landfall. And that is another way of saying what I just told to the people of Louisiana. We need to be ready and don't underestimate this storm because you think it may be a tropical storm or Category 1. Those are serious enough. It could be worse than that, however. So thank you all for being here. And as I always say, we need to prepare and we need to pray for the best. Thank you.
Mr. Director?
Doctor? No, go.